And we are live. All right, everybody. Thank you for popping by. This is Samuel G, and this is a live interview. I have the opportunity tonight to have a live interview with Emergent Play, aka Larry from Tabletop Superhighway. Hi, Larry. How are you?
I'm doing very good. We actually recorded an episode of Tabletop Superhighway just tonight, but thanks to our delayed release, it won't be out for a little bit.
And, that's crazy. That's totally crazy because that's the thing. This is super live. Like we've been trying to plan this thing for like a week or two, and it was kind of complicated in the last couple of days. And you just popped on the Facebook and you said, "Hey, I might be available, but I have to record this this podcast before, so it's one after the other."
Yeah, that's not a problem. We actually for a while were recording 2 episodes of the podcast back to back, but that got a bit much to try to do that. I'm hoping that this won't be a problem because I think this is going to be a little bit more casual than what I have to juggle several different people on a podcast.
Definitely, most definitely. By the way, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm probably best known among the community watching this as Emergent Play. I did the series of about 40 videos plus other bonuses and extra stuff that was thrown in, talking about game design and the concepts of basically game theory as much as I knew them to present them at the time. And that was back in, I want to say 2011 going into 2012. And that was finished up then. And since then, I had a quiet hiatus for a little bit. And I have now recently, about a year ago, started doing the Tabletop Superhighway, which had its year-long birthday about a month ago, which has been a podcast of mine that I do with a couple of my friends that I've gamed with for a number of years. And we talk about a lot of the same types of things that Emergent Play talked about. So if you like that and you are willing to make a format switch in order to listen to me as a podcast, then you might like the same thing there as well.
Obviously, so before we get started, you guys need to understand, Larry came up over YouTube and did a series of 40 episodes, then just left. That's it. I was done. That was it. This is it. Here's your tease. Here's your tease. Take this out. I did what I have to do, and now I'm out. So that leads me to my first question, actually, because it was for me it was quite interesting to see you just go. I was following you, and you just left. So what happened after Emergent Play?
There's a few answers to how that ended up happening the way it did. One of those things is that there is only so much that I know about things that I can present as knowledge the way that Emergent Play was developed. I tried to make the episodes to be kind of self-contained and have a lot of what you need to a lot of what I have to say about the topic in a very tight kind of a teaching format, the way it turned out being. And there's a limit to how much I really know that I can talk about easily, and they were weekly episodes. So at a certain point, I have to say, either I have to do a lot more research and maybe put it every month, and then it becomes a lot more work in order for me to make new ones because I'm running out of topics that I'm comfortable with, or I have to change the subject entirely, or basically change the entire format. So I ended up kind of deciding at the same time, as you might understand, I was moving, and that's a very busy time. So I kind of said, okay, why don't I try to end this around 40? I can get in everything I need to say by then, and I can be done in time to have time to move. And it was a combination of factors, but it was probably the biggest thing was that I was reaching the end of what I was comfortable presenting in terms of my knowledge.
Yes, and that's quite a legitimate reason because I've been vlogging for a couple of years now, and I've been repeating myself. I've been repeating myself so many times that I totally get what you mean. So now when we met last year, you mentioned that you wanted to go to podcast, and you did, and it's called Tabletop Superhighway, and you and so before I let you describe what it is, I've been following it religiously since it's out, and it's great. It's a great podcast, everybody. I'm going to post the link in the box below. Go check it out. There's a episode coming out really often.
Every 2 weeks is what we aim for. But lately, we've had a lot of guests. So
yeah, every 2 weeks they're regular, and they are on point every time. Great work. So what's up with Tabletop Superhighway? Can you describe it a little bit? Tell us what it is.
Sure. Again, I'm talking about a lot of similar topics to what I talked about in Emergent Play, but it's more of a conversation. We'll have, there's myself, Alex, and Jesse. They're both people I've gamed with before. Jesse has been gaming longer than me, and he comes from a background, like he still plays in Pathfinder games every other 2 weeks. So there's an endless supply of stories about the problems he's having with the players at his game, where somebody rage quit the game recently, and all kinds of wonderful stuff to hear about. So enjoy those. Alex came into the hobby and has mostly only played like the more story indie game side of things, which makes things interesting because Alex can kind of be the voice of, I have never heard of this before, and Jesse can be the voice of, well, this is what people are used to because they've been doing it for a very long time. It's been very, very different than running the video channel for a few different reasons. One, as I'm sharing it, so that's both good and bad. Like whenever I did the video series, I had complete control of the video series. I picked the topics, I picked recording time, I edited. Well, I still edit things myself, but it's very, very different, I found, to make a video series than it is to make this other series, because I have to schedule everyone together, and then we have a conversation. The conversation may go places I had never thought it might. We may learn things as we're having the discussion, which happens quite often. I find we get going and someone's opinion bounces off somebody else's opinion, and we kind of realize something in the moment, which I really love whenever that happens. So it's different, it's exciting, and I really like it. But I've been listening to podcasts for a long time, especially RPG podcasts. So I've had this desire to do it for quite some time. It's just a matter of kind of finally getting around to saying, okay, do I know the people to do it? Do I have the time? Yeah, I think I can do this. And it turned out really, really well.
Yeah, actually. And so that's great. That's great. So this is the news about Emergent Play. And I got to say, beside this interview being a reason just to have your face back on YouTube,
yeah.
It's working very well. I remember you mentioning that you were listening to podcasts as your number one medium back when we met. It was, like you said, probably the number one medium you were listening to. So it's just great that it happened to you that way. So congratulations, great podcast. Keep going.
Thank you. We're having fun.
So with all this really busy situation you got there, you have time to play. So do you still have time to play? So what are you playing
absolutely.
right now?
A few different things right now. I ran a game of Apocalypse World for a few people locally, some of which had never played anything even close to that before, but they took to it really well, which worked great. And a few other people have some interest in some other types of games that they've never played Fiasco before. So I've kind of tapped into a group very recently who are interested in trying a lot of that type of thing. So there's always that. There's some players I've been playing with for a while, and we have there every now and then like a little one-off. I think the next one's planning to be Hope in Humanity, which a friend of mine actually designed, but it's a very, very interesting game, and it caused a lot of game. Yeah, you know that one. Yeah, you've met Derek.
I know that game, and I'm still looking for people to try it over here. Mm. But I know it's been through the final product now. It's done, and it made a couple changes. So I need to get myself a copy to see the difference between.
And the new art is really nice too. So that's always good. And I've had a game of Edge of the Empire, which is kind of a bit of a misnomer. It was a spin-off of a game I was running last year with a buddy of mine that was in that game and kind of wanted to keep going, and Jesse from the podcast. And now that we've kind of started things up on our own, we just kind of do that over Hangouts. We've mangled the rules a lot, which I normally, I always say, try not to mangle the rules until you've actually played it as intended, so you can see the way things work and the way they don't work for you. And yeah, I've changed a lot of things about it, but we're doing a little bit of Edge of the Empire.
So that's the thing, you see, because I've been listening to that podcast, and every time you mention, you've been playing that game, because at the beginning of the podcast, every time you guys ask each other, what are you playing lately? And so you've been playing that game, and I knew it. So the next question was about that. So you said, you've mentioned in your podcast that you made a comeback to a traditional game, because the Edge of the Empire.
It's kind of middle ground, but it has some elements, but not entirely. Yeah.
Exactly. There you go. So I was really interested to hear you about the game, because it's one of these games that they have these special narrative dice. They have these special rules that allow for more.
But they also have experience, and they have skills and stuff like that. Yeah.
There you go. And I was curious to know, okay, so if you came back to that more traditional game, did you change the rule? But you answered that already. So
originally I didn't, but I have now that I've like had a good test run of it. Part of the reason I was doing it as well is it's easier to find players for that. And as I mentioned, I moved whenever I changed it. I moved to a smaller city, about a third the size of where I was living before. And it's tricky to find people sometimes. So you kind of have to stretch things a little bit. I've been a little bit lucky lately that people, hey, they like Apocalypse World. In fact, I ran an ongoing game of Apocalypse World about a year ago whenever the podcast was new. And we're actually thinking of going back to that world and back to those characters and seeing what they've been up to. So, yeah, I think part of it was that I tried it whenever somebody else ran it when I was visiting some friends a couple of years ago, and I was actually fairly impressed by the choices that they made in the design of the game. And it was also partially that I could more easily find players for this and, you know, kind of see who I liked playing with and who I didn't in terms of the local community.
So by playing that game with the special rules and the special thing that they have, and also coming back after a couple of years probably to a more traditional structure of gaming and narration, what have you learned? Have you learned something from it?
I've learned that I definitely have been reminded of the fact that people can fall into the way that they're used to playing. Even if they've got some new doors open to them, they can very easily have the blinders on and kind of ignore that there are these narrative exits. I've learned that I don't mind planning for sessions because I haven't been used to it for a long time.
That's
but
the thing.
it's not my favorite thing to do, but it's not that bad. People complain about this a lot, and I think if the GM's complaining about the fact that they have to like do all this planning for sessions, you know, either try a game that doesn't require you to plan for sessions, or maybe you're just kind of getting tired of what you've been doing.
So you get back into that prep thing. I remember a podcast I've listened a couple weeks ago about, you know, you said that you're finding you find yourself prepping again. You said something about finding yourself prepping again and finding it cool at the same time.
It's not bad. People sometimes refer to it as lonely fun. You know, I spent a lot of my youth running a lot of very similar games to this. I spent so much time getting things ready, and nowadays, like when I ran Apocalypse World for a few people, I literally had nothing. I had the sheets printed off for people and just handed them out, and off we went. And as they're making characters, I kind of just say, okay, what can I do to each of these characters in their intros, and then just like get balls rolling and see what happens. And it works fine.
Yeah, it seems like a pretty good game. So it's one of my lists, and you know, I need to try it out just for the dice thing, and also for Star Wars, because Star Wars is good. But
yeah, I made a few changes that I like to it, but find the right group for it. You'll probably have a ton of fun with it.
All right. So I was listening to the podcast again, and I had this topic that was brought by Alex on your podcast. She was talking about a good distinction. I made a video a couple of weeks ago about it. It's the distinction between good design and efficient design. And so you guys were talking about conditioning and all that psychology. And my question to you is, what is good design in RPG for you? Now, that's a really hard question. So just to make sure, not talking about taste.
Sure,
pragmatic. Just pragmatic.
Which actually makes the question harder in some ways, because you have to separate your taste from it. Because I personally like things that are simple. I like things that are well designed and elegant. Honestly, this isn't just role-playing games. If I see like a manufactured product and it's like, oh, well, this works really well. All the pieces go together nicely. Everything is efficient and it works well, and it does the task it's meant to do, and it does it really well. I like that. And that's true in role-playing games as well. I like systems where you can kind of, if you read it with kind of a designer's eye and you kind of look at how all the parts interact, you can say, oh, I really like how this mechanic causes people to get involved with other characters' lives. I like how this mechanic puts people against each other at the right moments and together at other moments, you know? And I really like design that basically where all the pieces interact in ways that just make the story more interesting. And I realize it's a very kind of wide open kind of an answer, but if you read something like My Life with Master, it's a perfect example of this. If you look at My Life with Master, you kind of have a few little stats, and the stats are actually, you know, things like your character's mental state, and they have so much of an effect upon the types of actions a character is capable of. Like one character might be more capable of resisting their master in this moment, but less capable of committing an act of violence because of the same stat. And at the end of the game, it determines how their character ends. So you've only got a few pieces, but they interact in multiple ways and do something that's very, very interesting by the end. And My Life with Master has been over a decade since that one came out. So like that's even people have been building upon those ideas for a long time.
So if I'm right, that's Balsega, right?
Yes.
So that's my next question, because that was so just before getting to that question. So if I understand you right, you're talking about a game that everything is intertwined in a way that it works fine together. Nothing is weird. Nothing is clunky here and smooth here. Like everything is just works well, and it feels good as well when you do it.
Exactly. Yeah.
And also, it has to be the story has to be mechanically embedded somehow.
Exactly. I should have mentioned that myself, but yes, the mechanics create the types of story that you're there to play. It should absolutely for games that I like. That should be definitely a part of it.
So, just throwing a curveball at Runeslinger, should we call ourselves gamist in terms of the agenda? You know, like in the big
yeah.
No, well, I mean we, because I assume that I have the same kind of taste. You know,
that's a transcendental conversation, because what was interesting about that is that people will sometimes say, hey, you know, these hits like My Life as Master, that's not a role-playing game because it doesn't have this and this, and it's not what people traditionally think of. But there is a win state. Like if your goal is to kill your master as your minion in My Life with Master, which it could totally be, then there is a way that you can win that. And in most role-playing games, there is no win condition, you know. But a lot of these types of games technically do have one. But I think we have to kind of accept that in the role-playing game hobby, we've already stretched the meaning of the word game. You know, role-playing games technically aren't even, if you look at it, things from the word, depending upon which definition you're using, they're not really even games. They're more closely toys, actually, because they're things that we play with and we do something with ourselves to have fun. We don't get the fun from the game, we get it through the game, kind of a thing. So
but
we're already stretching things, yeah.
Oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because if you look at an RPG, especially you know, those small RPGs from the indie press that have really little rules, not too much, not too much rules. What they provide you with is they provide you with a structure, just a couple tools you can use to structure an experience. Now, okay, guys, tonight we're gonna have an experience. We're gonna be bugs in a court, you know, having a trial. You know, this.
Exactly.
You know, I'm referring to a Game Chef game that you guys.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
all hail Bugtown or something like that. Yeah.
Bugtopia.
Bugtopia. Yes.
So this is
a lot of fun. Yeah.
This is a structure. And just follow these guidelines, and you will have an experience. And for me, when you say that it stretches the word games, I like what you say when you say it's a toy, because you can play with it.
Yeah, we don't like to use that because it honestly, a lot of people would be kind of insulted if you refer to them as toys, because you know they are fairly complex, and we have this childish kind of a look. So I'm not advocating for us to refer to them as role-playing toys, because that'd be kind of like that would be pushed back against so hard, and rightfully so. There's some connotation to that, but we have to kind of look at that before we even say, okay, is this more of a game or less of a game? Because something like Fiasco that has no GM, that is like pretty much all pass the stick storytelling kind of a thing, you can try to have a positive outcome for your character and try to game that. You can try to get like all of one color of dice, and there's like in order to have a better chance of a positive outcome at the end. And there's nothing like, you'll still have fun, and people around you will still have fun as you do that. But that definitely is a win condition that you're giving yourself through the game, and the game has definitely already kind of made it for you if you wanted to take it. So yeah, like you could make the argument that there is a very strong game component to how a lot of people who play story games approach things, but at the end of the day, I think it really comes down to goals, and we're not so concerned with winning as much whenever we sit down. We're really just concerned with having a great story emerge between us and the other players.
Yeah.
The gameist narrativist thing. It was never, I think, about the. It was always about what you as a player wanted. It was never really about whether or not you could win at the game or whether or not the game did a specific thing or certain things. It was really just about what was facilitated from play and what people wanted.
Oh, that's really that's a nuance. Really keen. Good. Yeah, I agree. So my next question, my next question was like, I'm gonna have to formulate another way. I was about to ask you, who are your favorite designer, but I'm gonna ask it differently. I'm gonna ask you, who I don't know how to say that in English, but which designers are you looking at right now that you are most interested in?
Okay, that's a good question.
You see the difference? Yeah.
I see what you're saying. That actually makes it easier because it's such a small community that I've met a lot of designers. I've gamed with Jonathan Tweet, who wrote like 13th Age, and not really. And he told me himself when I first met him, one of his first things he said to me is like, "Yeah, I wrote 13th Age. It wouldn't really be a game that you'd like." And
but it's an interesting one, though. It's an interesting one.
It is interesting. But like I really like the guy. He seems like a nice guy. I've interacted with him a few times. In fact, I might do a chat with him one of these days. But
should have had him on the Tabletop Superhighway. That would be great.
That maybe will happen one of these days. I haven't got it lined up yet, but he doesn't live terribly far from me these days, so it may happen. Anyway, who am I watching these days? Well, Vincent Baker's always kind of worth watching because he's produced so many things that have changed the hobby very significantly.
I know he started a Patreon thing. Did it work? Do you know about that?
I'm not sure what level it has to get to for what to happen with his specific Patreon, but a lot of designers nowadays are running Patreons. Okay. Like, I don't know if the thing about a Patreon is it's not a Kickstarter. It doesn't have to hit a minimum in order to do a thing. So as far as I know, he's just kind of running it and producing stuff. But yeah, he's taken part in various game design little challenges recently, and he's definitely worth following on Google Plus because a lot of interesting conversations come out of him. So he's definitely somebody I'm always watching. Meg Baker, his wife, is also definitely worth watching. She's produced a lot of really interesting games over the years. I would love to see Robert Bowles' Sad and Miserable, The Secret Lives of Stand-Up Comedians, see some progress to that, although I haven't heard too much from him on that subject for a while. Maybe it's just kind of the calm before the storm before he throws up a Kickstarter, but I haven't heard from him lately. Last I heard, he was learning to do stand-up comedy and doing sets at stand-up comedian, like stand-up amateur nights, in order to get himself ready to produce a game about the depressing lives of being a stand-up comedian, which sounded really cool to me. Maybe it's just the type of games that we like to play. Other designers in general, I'm going to point to one more, so I don't name everybody that I know, but name is escaping me at the moment. The person who did Questlandia and 14 Days. Let me just look this up really fast. Hannah Schaefer. She's produced some interesting games very recently, and while she's not one of the big names right now, she's worth watching. Questlandia was very successful. 14 Days is a game that that's just finishing up now, from what I've been seeing on her feed, and that is a game about migraines and how they kind of consume your life and try to and take over your schedule and that sort of thing. So it's a very different type of game. She did the Bugtown one that you were talking about for the game design contest. She's just one of those people. She produces some really interesting stuff, and she's worth watching just to see what else might happen to come out of her. So I'll stick with those three for now, so I don't name off everybody that I know in the game design world, because I follow a lot on Google Plus. One
that I want to chime in right there that was on the Tabletop Superhighway is Emily Carabas. I was listening to Emily Carabas on the episode on the Tabletop Superhighway. Guys, you need to listen to this, because the conversation went on a really deep historical analysis of the design in the RPG history and all that. It was really great. Yeah. She has a keen understanding of the transformation the hobby has been going through, kind of thing. And I mean, just great.
Yeah.
Just great ideas.
She's written some great games. The only reason I didn't name her is because she's not designing as much anymore. She's a little bit more interested in the project that she's working on right now. She in the past did a series of 3 games that were like Breaking the Ice, Under My Skin, like the games about dating, which are interesting. And it's like for people who are interested in that type of thing, they're 2-player games, and you could like play with, you know, maybe a spouse or something like that who's interested in this, but isn't interested in killing orcs, you know. And I've played. You know, I've played Breaking the Ice before. It was a lot of fun. Very, very cool little game. But yeah, it wasn't any coincidence that she was our first guest. Like, Alex and I both know her in person. We like talking to Emily. She's very fun to chat with and very smart and has a lot of interesting things to say.
And also, I mean, guys, you guys need to understand, like, these games that she produced is about love. The main theme is love, and love is one of those taboo thing in role-playing games that has never been, like, nobody role-play love. It's really rare. Nobody wants to go there, kind of thing. Like, you know, so, and it's really hard to, you know, achieve in terms of role-playing game design or whatever, just come up with something that's workable, you know, about love.
For sure, yeah.
So yeah, that gives you an idea.
That's absolutely true. Like, most people aren't willing to show that type of level of vulnerability in their role playing at the table to role play out something that it's like love. So yeah, but very, very cool little games.
Yeah. So that leads me to my next question about talking about games. Like, what is your favorite games? So now that's a complicated question. So maybe right now, like
right now. What I like right now?
Yeah. What do you like right now?
I'm still excited about Apocalypse World just because I ran it recently. Like that, like having had a really cool little session of it makes me more excited about that. And I'm always willing to pull back into that. Misspent Youth is always a favorite of mine. Like, we were talking about cool little bits of game design. That one has some really interesting bits of game design, but it uses language in really interesting ways. Like, whenever you try to like get a victory, even though you rolled a defeat by like by reversing one of the traits that make your character who they are, it's called selling out. And that has such an effect upon the players of the team. Like, oh yeah, are you willing to sell out part of who you are in order to win this conflict against the man? So that, like, stuff like that makes me very excited in games.
And that's Misspent Youth, right?
Yeah.
So, and Misspent Youth, it's important to understand that you're a teenager, like in
teenage
some kind
rebellion
of
and a fucked up future. Yeah.
There you go. So when you sell out as a teenager, it means a whole lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And another one, I'm gonna pick. Actually, I'll pick a couple that that are just on the verge these days. One is going to be. I'm fairly interested in Cartel. We actually just put up a podcast talking with the creator, which is Mark Diaz-Truman, who I've met before. He's a really cool guy. And Cartel is an Apocalypse World hack that is going through the Mexican gang drug cartels and kind of like their messy lives and that type of thing, which is very interesting. Like, he's Hispanic himself. He's close to that. Like, he lives in southern U.S. It's totally around him in this culture all the time, and he's trying to kind of like bring those stories into our world. But I've read through the sheets recently for it because it's still in its early stages, and it's looking like it's going to be very, very interesting. Like, it's looking like a very I want to say intense hack of Apocalypse World.
I need that, you know, that now that you're talking about that, I never been following all the Apocalypse World hack, but now there've been so many of them. So I'm wondering.
Yeah, they're very different too. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go. So I was wondering, like, how different after a while they're gonna be so different that it's not.
It's true. Well,
game, you know. So
the thing with like all the Apocalypse World hacks, like they're all kind of owing back to Apocalypse World in some way, but it's kind of just a new mechanic that was created by Apocalypse World. It just kind of made the color first mechanic, where the dice aren't that much about determining whether you succeed or fail. They just kind of allow some color to be inserted into the story around whatever the event might be. So it's kind of like if somebody for the first time created point buy systems in role-playing games. Suddenly everyone's going to say, hey, how can I use this mechanic to tell the types of stories that I want to tell? So it's almost like a new piece of technology. You know, Apocalypse World is the smartphone technology role-playing games right now. It feels like where everyone's trying to see what they can do with this and what new ways they can twist it to.
That is a testament to Vincent Baker right there. Like for me, you mentioned Megway Baker and Vincent Baker as being really interesting to follow. I mean, I remember when I was reading Siren and getting to learn Siren, just the idea of, because I was watching an interview with Vincent Baker and he was mentioning about the fact that he had this idea one day where he was thinking about what if the player can manipulate the dice after they are rolled. And then they came up with the structure for games like Siren, because so this is the kind of ideas that are really original, and they can actually change the whole culture of the dice, because most people, once the dice are rolled, it's over. But now it's the opposite.
Now you roll the dice and then you make your decision.
Then
you
decide
what's important to you based on what you have in front of you.
There you go. So it's a totally different kind of game right there. So talking about the games that you've been playing and all that, like now, I recently, I was talking to you about how much Burning Wheel was meant to me, and it changed my whole paradigm of gaming and all that, and it introduced me to indie games. But I played so much of it that I kind of burned out, and it had to happen because I played too much of it. So my question to you is, what are the games you used to like and end up not liking so much anymore, and why? So before you answer, I just want to say, it's not that I don't like Burning Wheel anymore. It's just, it doesn't do it that much.
No, I totally get you. Like Burning Wheel wouldn't be my first choice either. The first time I read it, I was so excited. I'd never read anything quite like it before. You probably went through the same thing where it's like, wow, this game focuses on the experience that it wants. But it's too heavy for me now. It's too much to teach people. It's too long of a play period in order to get the biggest payoffs the systems can provide. So yeah, Burning Wheel is probably on that list of like it's still a hugely influential game to me. And if I could totally see sitting down and playing like a one shot of it here and there, but it would not be top of my list for things that I'm rearing to go on my on my game night. Other than that, to be honest, like the way that things end up happening where we jump around a lot, I don't really get a chance to get tired of a lot of games, which is kind of fortunate. I guess I'm getting a little tired of Dread. I'll say that. Go on.
Yeah, well, Dread. You have a story about Dread because you've been doing the play on demand thing.
Games on demand.
So that's
always games of Dread. Like, don't get me wrong, it's October. I may well end up running a game of Dread by the end of the month, but I can do them on autopilot now. So Dread, I can get a little tiring sometimes. Yeah.
So you would say that Dread is a good example of a game that you used to like, but you don't like anymore.
I'm not as excited about it as I used to be. Yeah, I won't say that I hate it. Like if people want to play Dread, that's great. I'll run a game of Dread, but it's just I don't have the same excitement for it that the players usually do. Because for a lot of people, it's the first time they've seen a game that approaches things in such a novel way as Dread. And in certain communities, you'll always see people all the time. Like every week, there's somebody new going like, "Hey, I heard about Dread. I want to try it." Yeah, it came out 15 years ago.
Yeah, it's an old game. And I tried it recently with my girlfriend just for the fun of it, and I saw how simple. I mean, it's so simple that I can see. I mean, this is the kind of game you can play once a week, once a year, twice a year, and it's like it's happening and it's nice, full of people around the table. That's gonna be a great time. But like,
you run on games on demand, and like everybody sees the tower, and they're like, "Hey, when can I play that?" Oh, as soon as they're done, great. And then you do like I did, run 3 games back to back.
But it's an amazing game, so yeah, check it out if you check it out if you don't know it. Check it out.
If you haven't played it yet, definitely do it. Unfortunately, it's one you can never play online. So
that's the thing, though. Yeah, that's the problem. I was thinking about a way to do it. It's impossible.
Unless you had like another multiplayer, like a version of it you could play,
or a virtual 3D tower that you click.
Yeah, exactly.
Forget about it.
I just don't think it would have the same weight as if you could actually see the tower tipping in front of you, because it does that, where it like kind of rocks back and forth and everyone holds their breath, and you'd miss that. It is a fantastic game. I've just played it too much.
My next question is on another tangent. There, it's the idea that so we heard that some say that traditional games tend to bring indie design ideas more often nowadays in their design. A good example of that would be maybe 13 Age or maybe Edge of the Empire.
Yeah, definitely
There you
does
go.
that.
So what do you think about this, and what do you think that means in terms of tendencies in designs overall, like trends and stuff like that? Because
Sure.
it is happening. We can see
Mhm.
it, even like the inspiration points in D&D 5 that can be maybe interpreted
Oh yeah.
that way, you know.
I haven't actually read 5th edition yet, but I can believe that it's probably got some stuff from there. 4th edition definitely even stole from indie games. Well, stole. Like they borrowed ideas from indie games because of the way it was focused on the experience. They wanted to focus it on the dungeon crawl, which actually turned out a little bit to their detriment. But it was definitely kind of taking those ideas. Emily Careboss said it really, really well whenever we were talking to her. I hate to steal her thunder, but there's just no better way to say it than when she did. Saying that indie games kind of provide the R&D department of gaming, where a lot of new ideas come out, and some of them work and some of them don't work, but they're tried and they make a game and a bunch of people play it, and it's kind of like the ones that end up working really well kind of rise to the top, and other people borrow them and in their games. Because if you look at a lot of games that I have on my shelf, you look at the back page or two and it's like, here's all of the games that I borrowed from. And they're basically taking the ideas that worked really, really well in those games and repackaging them in a different way. So it's kind of as if you imagine this to be like one big entity, all of role-playing games. They're the ones kind of like all the engineers picking things apart, trying different things. And, the other people will come by and be like, I really like that. I think I can get what I want. Like the product I'm making, I think I can make better by using that piece. And they might try that out. But they wouldn't want to do that with something untested, right? They wouldn't want to do, let's try out this new style of gaming on our product that we're spending potentially millions of dollars producing and printing off thousands of copies to find out that the change that you've made doesn't work, which is what these smaller press games do for us. We have a lot of people who they do a Kickstarter and it's only like $1,500, but they've sent off 100 copies of their game and people are trying it out, and that can turn into a lot of play tests of something and a lot of time for people to try out different games and see what works for them. So
it's interesting what you just said.
It's
interesting what you just said, because when I was listening to some of the indie designers, what they did is that they were playing games all their youth, and they were frustrated by stuff the game didn't do, and then they create their own games to like an answer or a critique of these games. Like, okay, so this didn't work. This is how it should be working, and so in that sense, they got influence, but not in a positive way, but in a negative way.
Sort of, yeah. And we're actually seeing it now, where a lot of people have never played the traditional game. They're coming into indie games and they're getting into that, and their ideas are very, very different as well, because they don't have that same background. So they like, for good or ill, they don't have years of playing more traditional style games to influence how they look at the current games that they play today. So and of course, people are like, American freeform LARP is becoming a huge thing, and those ideas are crossing back and forth, and all kinds of stuff is going on, where it's just a lot of different ideas, a lot of new things being tried out. So what do I think of this? I think it's great. I think that it can be beneficial to both. I think traditional games that take lessons from more of the indie style games and produce like a D&D 5e or something like that has ideas that were taken from these other things and maybe are more successful and people like them more. And by the same token, people who play indie games might say, well, you see how this mechanic worked? This is something that takes that to its logical conclusion. This idea of rewarding this type of play, well, that's exactly what this smaller game is about, and they might more easily get people to try out their games as well.
You see, that's the thing. Like recently, I started to go back to traditional game. I did a video recently about that, talking about the fact that indie games are great, but they are new, they're young, so they cannot. There's something you can't buy, and it's time. A setting like Traveler setting or World of Darkness setting is like 20 years old, like 25-year-old. It's so rich. There's so many things there.
They
So if you
definitely don't
want
have
to,
settings in a lot. Yeah, a lot of them
there you
aren't
go.
focused on the minutiae. Yeah.
There you go. So when you want to go back to, when you want to play a certain type of experience, you have to go back to those traditional games. And what I did is that I took my experience in the indie game, and I tried to apply it to the traditional. So so what I do is and I don't know, I don't use, you've mentioned with the Edge of the Empire, you said that you mingle with the rules a little bit. Personally, what I do is I don't touch the rules because I like my stuff raw. So I don't play, I play raw.
I usually do that too. Yeah.
But I changed the style of gaming. I changed the approach. I changed the culture of play, the social contract. So is that what you were talking about when you were talking about Edge of the Empire, when you said you mingle with the rules?
No, I specifically changed certain things to get results that I want. I'll give an example or two. Like they have a system where you've got your hit points, your wounds, and they've got like a strain system for if you get like a stun weapon hit you. And that's basically just a different set of hit points. And I'm like, that's not really that interesting. But what would be really cool is if instead of strain being a set of hit points, I just basically say, okay, you took a strain, and from now on, you get one of these black die that isn't good. It's basically a negative dice that you're rolling with all your positive dice. Every time you make any roll, until you stop and have a conversation, until you stop and say, all right, we gotta talk about what's happening with us. We gotta talk about what's happening in our story around us, or basically just kind of have that. Like movies do this all the time. That moment where they kind of stop and like they discuss like, okay, what's our next move? Because in a lot of role-playing games, people have a tendency to just focus on the task and not the reason. So this was a way to kind of bring this back. And I stole that straight up from a different game. Its name is Lady Blackbird. I stole it straight out of Lady Blackbird. They have refresh scenes. It's exactly what it does. And it works. It's worked quite well for me in the game so far. The players don't mind, even though it's totally me basically saying like, yeah, you guys get a strain for that, you know, because you've had a tough moment. Deal with it. You've got a black die until you have a conversation. But they don't mind because it's kind of sitting there waiting for them to take that moment that they have in play and have a conversation that they're going to enjoy role-playing in character. So, you know, it's worked out fairly well for us so far. And there is a certain, like, if I played a D&D type of game or like something that was very, very traditionally modeled with people who were used to playing more story-oriented games, we would play it different. Like we're used to, what we know we want out of the game is going to be different.
Without necessarily changing the rules. That's the thing.
This is true, yeah.
So you use the traditional rules, but you have a totally different approach to it. You know.
But that's a little bit unique in that we all know each other. Like if I was playing with people who I didn't know or people who did come from more traditional background, it's not necessarily going to work for me, I find, to tell them that hey, you know, you guys can do whatever you want. We want to focus on your characters' lives and stuff like that. Without the game kind of pointing them in that direction, it's very easy to fall into what you've been doing for a long time. You get that behavioral momentum going on.
Yeah, definitely.
So it's the audience has to be taken into account for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Now I have another question for you. It's more of a historical analysis type of question. It's like the idea is that I would like you to analyze what happened in game design from the early 2000s and today. Like so the Forge era and till today. So what have we learned in the last 12 years or so? So when the Forge started and all that, and there was this kind of explosion of ideas and game designs, conversation online and all that. So it's almost 12 years now. Yeah. And maybe a little bit more than that. So what do you think we've learned with all these games that's been coming out and all that? So what happened?
Yeah. I was a little bit late coming to the party, so a lot of the early stuff I know a lot less about. In fact, I was just getting into this stuff and just starting up my channel around the time that Forge shut down. But for anyone who isn't familiar, the Forge was started by Ron Edwards, who wrote Sorcerer and Troll Babe and a couple of other games. And
Circle of Hands recently.
Yeah, Circle of Hands was his most recent one. And that was basically a place that was designed for people to come together to help each other make games. Because at that point in time, not a lot of people had self-published before. but the capability of doing it was becoming easier and easier all the time. Like, publisher, it was easier to publish a book. It was easier to get the software you needed to like make a PDF and to make things look like more of a final product. And they kind of worked together to produce various things and bounce ideas off of. Where things have changed since then, I think the biggest one is how many games are coming out nowadays, like just the sheer mass of games that are being made and bought and consumed and enjoyed by people who are doing this for fun, like totally their hobby. They have another job, they're just doing this on the side. And a lot of our favorite games are coming by people who are not doing that professionally. Vincent Baker, Meg Baker, Emily, they've all got day jobs, That's what it comes down to. So that's a huge thing. And another thing that's happened a lot is the types of conversations that we're having are changing. This actually started with Ron Edwards, where he started to like create a little bit more of a vocabulary, of a glossary of ideas, and had a lot of concepts like that. And it's getting to the point where I think someplace in Scandinavia, you can actually go to university and learn about game design, like role-playing game design and LARPs, and they're taken very seriously over there. So we've really started to like crack open the box and kind of look a little bit inside on how these things work and how they interact with our brains during play and our emotions and that type of thing. We're really expanding a lot of what we know, and we've been providing a lot of tools to people, and people get excited very often when like the communities around them have also been built up, especially on G+, where like somebody will say, hey, check this out, I made nano games. That was Epidiah Ravenshaw. And suddenly everyone's doing nano games. In fact, there was a contest earlier this year to write a game in 200 words or less, which we did an interview with David, who created that contest inadvertently. It's a good interview because he basically says, I wanted to do it for me, and then everybody else wanted to do it too, so it became a contest.
And this is, by the way, this is something I want to say about the nano games. You've been mentioning nano games, I think. I mean, from your first...
they became a thing whenever we were doing when I was doing the videos, yeah.
You were doing videos, you went to PAX, and they were just coming out from Epidiah Ravenshaw, and you mentioned nano games on the card, and I was always like, what is that? And then I went to PAX, and I saw what it was, and it's true. It's actually true. It's a small card, and it's just a bunch of rules written really small, but it fits there. It's not so, it's there. So it's true. It exists. Like,
it's a full game. I don't know if there's a official rules. I don't think they usually go past about 600 words. So that's all you need to do to play it. So yeah,
all you need. Yeah.
I don't think they're ever going to replace all of the games, but it kind of showed us what we can do with design and the types of things that we can make possible. Like by the same token, like the first time somebody made a commercial, I'm sure that was a big thing in film because we had never seen somebody try to present an idea in 30 seconds before. So it's kind of a lot of new things popping out all the time. It does tend to happen. Like I follow a lot of people on G+. It does tend to happen. There's a bit of an echo chamber where something new comes out and you'll hear about it a lot. Kickstarters happens with things all the time. And that that's just people getting excited about stuff. But it's one of those things. I think in terms of the tendencies of overall design, I think that if I were to try to put a word on things, I think it's kind of exploration. We're seeing what we can do, what games are capable of, and that sounds a little bit more high-minded. That sounds very high-minded for the fact that we're just trying to have some fun in our dining rooms, kind of a thing, over on the game or online or whatever the case might be.
Yeah, you see, this is the thing. My next question, we already on there. Is what is the current trend in game design? And you start to talk about it. Like there was I've heard there is a game. You've mentioned it on your podcast a couple of times. There is games now that are designed for Hangout. There is game now that are designed for specific things, really, really specific things. And for me, I think you're right when you mention exploration, because this is something I've been thinking about. It's like there is a game, you guys have been talking about it. I don't remember the name. I think it's Get Out the Dodge.
Something like that.
Yeah. So
the one for the car. Yeah. Road trip.
So the game is all about you're in a car and it's an escape situation.
Yeah.
You guys did something and you want to go somewhere else.
I haven't played that one myself yet, but Out of Dodge, I think. Yeah.
Out of Dodge or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And there was the game about the Bugtopia. So that was a
Game Chef entry. My Game Chef entry this year was designed to be played over Twitter. I did a quick test of it with somebody, and found out that I actually hated playing it. Like,
That's interesting. You never mentioned your game on your podcast.
Yeah, no, I wrote a. It wasn't a very long game, but I wrote a game that the idea is that somebody is seeking advice for their life situation over Twitter with somebody else, with a total stranger, you know. And the idea is to use Twitter and basically be like, okay, I'm going to go talk to, you know, my boss about this. Talk to you in 8 hours. And you'd actually wait 8 hours before they get back to you, and like that would kind of give you that feeling.
So it's almost I'm sorry. So it's almost like play by posting.
A little bit, yeah, but it's intentionally got the breaks in it in order to like.
And it's almost like a LARP at the same time.
In some ways, yeah. I will admit though, like I did a test run of this game, and really made me uncomfortable because you really feel like whenever you're playing the person who's asking for advice, you really feel like you're lying to somebody. You really feel like you're manipulating them, and it did not work for me. Although I'm sure there's an audience out there for it.
That's
just not myself.
That's the thing. You see, there is a couple of games like that. Actually, I was thinking about your friend Jesse on your podcast, who mentioned a game in Japanese, and he said, you know, this is the limit of the game. If I don't know about Japanese history, if I'm not that type of person, this game's not gonna work for me. And your Twitter game right there that might be it, you know. So this is something that happens with these games. When this is something I've noticed, the indie games, they've been exploring so much, they go into niche, and when your game becomes so niche, it becomes like a game that has a boundary, you know, like it's gonna go for these type of people only, and that's it.
Yeah.
So the game
14
is
days. Not everybody wants to play a game about migraines, but to the people who do, thank you for the internet. We would never be able to find them otherwise. Like, you'd never be able to just put this on the shelf at your game store and expect the audience to find it that way. The internet actually gives us the ability to find these very, very niche audiences and give very focused experiences to the ones who want those particular experiences.
You know what you just made me think about is the idea that role-playing games are becoming, with these indie press game, really niche game, it's becoming an entry to different kind of culture that one is never going to be able to experiment otherwise. Imagine the people who have migraines. They are out there. People who have chronic migraines. It's part of their life. It's structured their life in a way, you know, that you know, they have to shut down the light in their houses, and they have all, you know, evening, you know, in their room in the dark and stuff. These people, they understand each other. You know, when you are a migraine person and you meet another migraine person, there's a culture, and these games. I'm not a migraine person. I never have a migraine in my life. So when I have the opportunity now to play that game, I can maybe have an opportunity to understand what they feel. So these really niche games, it seems to me like they become emulators, cultural emulators, like subculture emulator kind of thing. Do you know what I'm saying?
A lot of LARPs seem to be formulated that way as well. A lot of LARPs are very focused. And the other thing that somebody was talking about this on G+ recently about LARPs is that LARPs are a lot closer to playing yourself a lot of the time, in just the way they end up happening. At least in terms of like the American Freeform or the Scandinavian LARPs. So yeah, it's a lot closer to that as well there. But you definitely see that in indie games as well. Or you know, have like the bug court thing, which, you know, is a little bit more Canadian fun, you know.
Yeah, this is less of like a cultural emulator, but it's the same kind of thing. Like you can, instead of, you know, doing that endless storytelling quest that has no boundaries whatsoever, now you have a really niche situation. Like, let's have that experience, or let's have that experience. It's really interesting. I'm not sure, and that leads to my next question. Like, so what if we look at the trends in game design right now, and we see it as being that exploration of really niche thematics and cultural aspect of society, or just culture in general, where it's gonna go? Now, that's the thing. Like, if you have to foresee,
that's really hard to say. I think that the only answer I can give that has any likelihood of being true is another aspect of this is that people are trying to be very inclusive and getting different voices involved. So right now, the RPG hobby is a lot of white guys. We're going to start seeing voices coming in from people that are basically not white guys and talking about their experiences. And I think we're going to see a lot more of those types of stories being told. That's probably likely to happen just as a result of these two different things about like sharing experiences and trying to talk to new audiences and trying to get new people that aren't traditionally have been designing these types of games as much, designing more of them and sharing their culture and their experiences and their backgrounds with us. So that's the only thing I think I can say with any certainty, because beyond that, it's so exploratory. Like, who knows? Maybe there'll be a designer come out next year and write something that just blows Apocalypse World out of the water, and like everyone's going to be interested in their big thing. We can't really tell.
So you're not necessarily going to say that it's going to be a mechanical thing or a design thing more than a cultural thing. It can be,
I think that they're going to be combined. I think, to be honest, we're always going to see new mechanics coming out, but you can't really tell what new ideas, what new ways of messing with things people are going to come up with. Probably new ways of using mediums is probably going to be a thing. Like, the games played over Google Hangouts and stuff like that, for example. Well, we'll definitely see stuff like that, and it'll be interesting to see where people go from there. But I can't say for sure what we're likely to see.
If you see, if we look at something like Roll20, Roll20 is crazy.
Yep.
Just the way they embedded the character sheet and the way they allow you to have this old interface. But I was listening to you mentioning the idea that it's all white guy right now, and if it starts to open to other culture and stuff, I can see stuff being like I can see, because right now what we need is RPG about religion. RPG about gender issues, RPG to help people expand their views and learn about each other. So maybe one thing I would say that would be really good. I'm just hoping right now. Like you say, we cannot know, but I hope that RPG would become good learning tools to help kids open up to different way of seeing the world.
There are people writing games like that for sure. Like, there are definitely people with that idea in mind. Like, I want to make games for kids, and then adding to that layer, like, I want to make games that teach kids to cooperate. That would totally be a thing you could do in role-playing games, that kind of thing. So you'll definitely probably see that. You talk about Roll20. I think that online gaming is probably going to become a bigger and bigger thing. I think the biggest thing to handle with that is sound. Actually, I think it's probably going to be to try to simulate something where right now you can only ever have one person talking in a hangout. Otherwise, it just doesn't work. You're talking over each other. But at a table, you can totally have two conversations going on. It's if they can start to create that a little bit more effectively, that'll be great.
But that will come with time, because now it's the technology thing. Some people have old computers, some people have new computers.
The RPG industry probably won't do that. Google will do that for meetings, and we'll just latch on to the technology because we do that. So that's it's hard to say anything for sure, but I think we're just going to see a lot more news stories is what's going to happen. A lot more expansions into different areas.
All right. So last question before I let you go. It's a great conclusion question. It's so what are your RPG project right now, and what do you expect from the culture in the next couple of years? So what are you doing right now? Are you designing games and stuff? And
the podcast has been keeping me really busy this month anyway, because we've been having a lot of guests. We've actually been contacted a lot recently by people who want to chat with us. So there's a lot of that going on. I just finished up taking part in 3 Forged, which was a role-playing game contest where you created a section of an RPG, then you hand it off to somebody else, and you get somebody else's first stage, and you turn it into the next stage, and then you turn it into the next stage. So that just wrapped up maybe a week ago. And that was a big deal. So that wrapped up. I've got something that I've been poking at now and again. I mentioned on the podcast once, which is a game that's kind of a little closer to like The Martian or Gravity, where you're kind of a character in a very, very dangerous environment trying to solve the problems in order to get back home. And it would be a very solo thing. I've kind of run into a wall on that one in terms of trying to figure out how to do a piece. So that one's on a hiatus while I try to solve a mechanical issue. But it's always one of those things where we have a lot of conversations on that channel and on the podcast, and we end up discussing an idea that'd be really cool if somebody made that. So who knows what ideas may end up actually flowing into real games. For now, we got a lot with the podcast, and we're trying to get ready for the Christmas break because we know people are hard to schedule over that period of time. So we like to get a little bit ahead of ourselves.
Yeah. What about an RPG now called Christmas Eve? We're gonna role play a Christmas Eve, middle of June. How about that?
I think that's an experience that most people have had, and it's pretty. I've actually never been a big fan of the Christmas games, but
remember, some people in the world, they don't have Christmas, they don't celebrate.
This is true.
They can learn about it.
I just mail them a gift, and that would be just as big as.
All right. Well, Larry, thank you very much for showing up here, and it was great. It was great to see you, and everybody. This is Larry. Go check him out at Tabletop Superhighway, and thank you guys for watching. See you guys around.
See ya.